In the first part of this series, we designed our invoice and applied smart formulas to make everything calculate automatically. But a real automated invoice system doesn't stop at formulas. In this video, we are taking the next big step, automation using LibreOffice macros. You will see how a single click can add new invoice rows, record invoices into a tracker, reset the invoice for the next customer, and keep everything perfectly organized without manual work. Don't worry if you are new to coding, I will explain every line of the micro in simple language so you understand now just what the code does but why it works. By the end of this video, you will have a professional level automated invoice system built entirely in LibreOffice. Let's open the macro editor and start the automation. In Excel, tables automatically add a new row when you press the tab key. LibreOffice Calc doesn't have this feature, so instead of adding rows manually, we will create our own solution. This add row macro insert a new row below the selected row, copies formulas and formatting, and clear only manual input just like an Excel table. Let's build it step by step. Option explicit. This line forces us to declare every variable before using it. It helps prevent spelling mistake and logic error in macros. Now we are starting our subroutine add row, adding variables. O document refers to the current Libri file. O sheet refers to the active sheet. O select stores the currently selected cell or row. Cell row will store the row number selected. Start column and end column define the table range. Copy range variable row we want to copy and destination range row where we want to paste the selected cells. Dim call as long C as object used later for looping through columns and cells. O controller control selection and navigation. O dispatcher allow us to use copy oblique paste command. O document this component and O sheet document current controller dot active sheet. This gets the current file and the active sheets. O controller is equal to O document dot get current controller. O dispatcher is equal to create Uno service. This line enable keyboard style action like copy and paste. O cell is equal to O controller dot get selection and cell row is equal to O selection dot range address dot start row. This find which row the user selected. Start column is equal to 2 and end column is equal to 9. This define where the invoice item table starts and end. Copy range is equal to O sheet dot get cell range by position. This selects the entire raw range to copy. O sheet dot raw dot insert by index inserts one empty row below the selected row. Destination range is equal to O sheet dot get cell range by position. Define where the copied row will be pasted. O controller dot select bracket copy range. O dispatcher dot execute dispatch uno copy. O controller dot select destination range. O dispatcher execute dispatch uno paste. These four line paste formulas and formatting below the line. Now at the end we use for loop and if condition to clear manual values only, keep formulas, remove type text and number, preserve formatting and delete all manual text. Now at the end, a confirmation message show a confirm pop-up message box inserted new row below selection. Now macro is complete. To test the macro functionality, select the last row of invoice table and click the play button on macro editor. A confirmation message pop up that confirm our macro working perfectly. As you can see, the new row is added to the invoice table and the formulas are copied with automatically updated references. Go to the Tools menu and click Customize. When the dialog appears, open the Keyboard tab. Now we will assign the Add Raw macro to a keyboard shortcut. Select the Add Raw macro from the category list. Then choose your shortcut key. I am assigning it to Control plus Shift plus W. Just make sure the selected shortcut key is not already used by LibreOffice Calc. Now let's test the shortcut key to confirm the macro is working correctly. As you can see, a new row is successfully added to the invoice table. Now we start by creating a subroutine called record invoice. This macro will save the invoice data into the tracker sheet. Here we declare object for the current document, the invoice sheet and the tracker sheet. Dim invoice as long, invoice date as string, due date as string. This variable will store the invoice number, invoice date and due date. Dim amount as double, customer as string. These variables store the invoice amount and the customer name. Dim next row as long, dim template row as long. These variables will help us identify where to write the data and where to insert a new template row. O document is equal to this component. This line reference the current LibreOffice file. O invoice equal to O dot sheet dot get by name invoice. Here we link the macro to the invoice sheet. Same for the tracker sheet where invoice will be stored. This read the invoice number from the cell reference H10. Invoice date is equal to O invoice dot get cell range by name. This read the invoice date. Due date is equal to O invoice dot get cell range by name H12. This read the due date. Same for amount and customer too. Customer cell value contain text, so we change it from value to string. Now we call a function that finds the next empty row in the tracker sheet. After finding the empty row, now we write the invoice number into tracker sheet. O tracker dot get cell by position 0 to next row. 0 is the column A. Same for invoice date, due date, and amount and customer. After inserting the data to the tracker sheet, we store the current row number to use a template. Template row is equal to next row. This insert a new formatted row below ready for the next invoice. Insert template row bracket O tracker comma template row. The insert template row subroutine works just like the add row macro. We call it while recording an invoice into the tracker sheet. Its purpose is to behave like an Excel table, automatically preserving, formatting, and updating formula reference for the next record. This way, we don't need to manually drag and copy formatting of formula every time on tracker sheet. Finally, a confirmation message tells us the invoice has been recorded successfully. Now we write the custom function to find the first completely empty row in a tracker sheet. We create a cursor to navigate on the tracker sheet. Cursor dot go to end of use area true. This move the cursor to the last use row. Last row is equal to cursor dot range address dot end row. We store that row number. Now we loop through each row from the top by using for row is equal to 0 to last row. We use if condition if any cell has data the row is not empty by using if cell contains text or value. Using another if condition if is empty then get next empty row is equal to row. When an empty row is found we return that row number. Get next empty row is equal to last row plus 1. If no empty row exists, we return a new row below the data. Now we are going to understand the insert template row macro in detail. As I said, this macro play a very important role in our automated invoice system. Its main purpose is to behave like an Excel table, automatically preparing the next row with the same formatting and formulas without any manual work. So instead of dragging formulas or copying formatting every time, this macro does everything for us in the background. Let's go through this macro step by step and understand exactly how it works. We start by declaring a subroutine called insert template row. This macro accepts two parameters. The first parameter O sheet represents the sheet where we want to insert the new row. The second parameter base row is the row that already contains formulas and formatting. This base row acts as our template. Here we declare two important objects O controller control selection and navigation inside call. O dispatcher is the dispatcher helper which allow us to use built-in command like copy and paste programmatically. These variables define the starting and ending columns of our table. In simple words, this tells LibreOffice which part of the row we want to copy. Copy range, object and destination range. These two variables represent cell ranges. Copy range is the row we want to copy and destination range is the row where we want to paste that data. Dim column as long and C as object. These variables are used to later in a loop. They help us move column by column and inspect each cell individually. As you can see, most of this code is similar to the add row macro with a small but important change. Here we first identify the last empty row, then copy the template row below it. After that, we move one row up and insert the invoice record there. This approach keeps formatting and formulas ready for the next entry while ensuring the new invoice data is always written above the template row. Now we will assign the record invoice macro to the button we created using a rounded rectangle shape. Right click on the button, choose Assign Macro and click on it. A dialog box will appear. From the macro list, navigate to your macro module, then select it, the record invoice macro. Once selected, click the Assign button to link the macro to the button. Now the button is fully functional. Let's enter some dummy invoice data and click the button to test whether everything works correctly. As you can see, the invoice record is successfully saved in the tracker sheet and all formatting is preserved. You may notice that the invoice date and due date are not displaying correctly. That because they are currently using the default number format. We just need to change the cell formatting to a date format and the date will display properly. Now the dates are displaying correctly, which is great. Next, let's verify whether our conditional formatting rules are working as expected. To test this, we will change the due date in the due date column. I will enter a past date. As you can see, the entire row is highlighted in red. This confirms that the conditional formatting is correctly detecting our due invoice. Now let's also test the payment status condition. If the due date has passed but the invoice is marked as paid, the row should return to its normal formatting, and if the invoice is still outstanding, it should remain highlighted in red. As you can see, the formatting updates instantly and work exactly as intended. Now let's move on to the final macro in this automation system called reset invoice. This macro is responsible for resetting the invoice template after an invoice has been recorded. It automatically clears the previous invoice data and prepares the sheet for the next entry. At the same time, it increment the invoice number, for example, from 1001 to 1002 and then onward. This ensures that every new invoice is ready to use without any manual adjustment. Let's start writing the reset invoice macro and see how it works step by step. First, we declare the macro and a few variables. O document represent the current LibreOffice file and O sheet point to our invoice sheet. We also declare some variable for looping through rows and column and one variable to store the current invoice number. Now we tell LibreOffice to work with the current document and then we specifically select the invoice sheet because that where our template lives. Next we read the current invoice number from cell H10. Let's say the invoice number is 1001. Right after that we increase it by 1 and write it back. So now the next invoice number become 1002 automatically. After updating the invoice number, we clear the customer details. This includes the customer name, address, related fees. Notice that we are only clearing the content, not the formatting. So the design stays exactly the same. Now comes an important part, clearing the invoice item rows. Instead of hard coding a fixed number of rows, we detect the end of the item list dynamically. We define the first item row, which in this case is row 21. Then we start checking each row one by one. From each row, we read the text in column C. This usually contains a product code or description. If the cell is empty, we know there are no more items, so we stop. And if we encounter the text subtotal, we also stop right there. This is important because we never want to touch subtotal and total rows. In our previous video, we use offset in subtotal. This is why we use. Once we know where the item table ends, we loop through only those rows. Inside each row, we move across the column that contain manual input. Before clearing a cell, we check one important thing. If the cell contains a formula, we leave it alone. If it's just manual, text, or number, we clear it. This way, all formulas remain intact and only user enter data is removed. After clearing everything, we move the cursor back to the customer name field so the invoice is immediately ready for the next entry. Finally, we show a confirmation message. It tells us that the invoice has been reset and show the new invoice number. Now let's assign this macro to the refresh record button. Just right click on the button, choose assign macro and do the same steps we follow for the add record button. From the macro list on the left, find the correct module, select the refresh record macro and click assign. Alright, let's test it by clicking the button. Oops, look like I made a small typing mistake in the code. No worries, that happened. I will quickly fix it and double check the rest of the code for any other type of mistake. Okay, let's run the macro again. Perfect. The macro works exactly as expected. As you can see, the invoice is now completely refreshed and ready for the next entry. Now let's test the complete invoice workflow. I will entering some dummy data into the invoice template, click add record and then use refresh record to prepare the sheet for the next entry. Everything works perfectly so far. Alright, one last thing before we finalize the invoice system. If you look at the tracker sheet, you will notice the amount column isn't being recorded yet. I actually left this part for the end on purpose. Let's fix that now. First, we need to assign a name to the total amount cell in the invoice and then reference that name range in above amount cell. Once that done, I will enter the dummy data again and click add record. And there we go. As you can see, the amount is now correctly showing in the tracker sheet. That's exactly what we want. And that's it guys. You have successfully created automatic invoice with invoice tracker in LibreOffice Calc and much more. If this video helped you, please like, share and subscribe for more future interesting videos. See you in the next video.